Babylon. Just the name itself, right? It sounds grand. It echoes with this feeling of power, of splendor, of incredible ambition. Well, today we're going to dig deep into the dust and uncover a story that stretches back more than 4,000 years. We're talking about the incredible rise and the dramatic fall of Babylon.
So let's just start with this question. I want you to try and picture this in your head. Imagine you could go back in time, all the way back to the cradle of civilization. What would one of the first, and maybe the greatest, city on Earth, what would it actually look like? Okay, so our story kicks off in a place you've probably heard of, Mesopotamia. You know, that Fertile Crescent, that amazing piece of land nestled right between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This is the spot. This is where the whole story of Babylon gets started. Now, for a long time, Babylon was, well, it was just one city among many. Nothing that special. But then, everything changed. We're talking about the 18th century BC, when this visionary king shows up on the scene, a guy who would literally change the course of history. His name? Hammurabi. See, Hammurabi wasn't just another conqueror. He was a thinker, a brilliant organizer. And the thing he's most famous for, his biggest legacy, is the Code of Hammurabi. And look, this wasn't just some list of don't do this, don't do that. No way. This was one of the very first times in human history that a society wrote down a complete set of laws for everyone to see, a real framework for how to live together. I mean, what a huge step for civilization, right? And the scope of this thing, it was incredible. His code covered pretty much everything you can think of. Property rights, family issues, even things like contract law, and making sure people got fair wages. Now, yeah, some of the rules might seem pretty harsh to us today. You've probably heard the phrase an eye for an eye. Well, that comes right from this code. But you have to understand how revolutionary this was at the time. It created a public, consistent system of justice, an idea that would go on to shape societies for thousands of years. All right, let's fast forward a few centuries. That foundation that Hammurabi laid, it was about to be taken to a whole new level. A new legendary king steps in, Nebuchadnezzar II. And this guy, he took Babylon from just a regional power and turned it into an absolutely breathtaking, sprawling metropolis. Seriously, this was the city that was the envy of the entire ancient world. So where do you start when you're building the greatest city in the world? Well, he started with the walls. But we're not talking about your average city walls. These things were on a scale nobody had ever seen before. They were so massive, so incredibly wide, that people said you could race two chariots side by side right on top of them. Think about that. This wasn't just about keeping people out. It was a statement, a declaration of pure power and invincibility. Okay, so you've made it past these giant walls. Now you're approaching the city itself. And what's the first thing you see? This, the magnificent Ishtar Gate. This was the grand, ceremonial entrance, dedicated to Ishtar, their incredibly powerful goddess of both love and war. And the craftsmanship, it's just stunning. The entire gate was covered in these brilliant blue glazed bricks that would have just glittered under that Mesopotamian sun. And all over it were these incredible carvings of dragons and bulls. And these weren't just for show, you know? They were symbols of divine power. Walking through that gate must have felt like you were leaving the mortal world behind and stepping into a place where gods and kings were one and the same.
But believe it or not, Nebuchadnezzar's vision went way beyond just city walls and gates. He was about to create something so legendary, it would become one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. So the story goes that the famous Hanging Gardens of Babylon were actually a gift. They were built for Nebuchadnezzar's wife, Amadis. See, she was from a land of green hills and mountains, and she was really homesick in the flat, dry landscape of Mesopotamia. So what does he do? He decides to build her a green mountain, right there in the middle of the desert. Can you even imagine the engineering genius it took to pull this off? I mean, these weren't just flower beds. They were massive, terraced structures that rose hundreds of feet into the sky, basically a man-made mountain. And they were filled with exotic plants and trees from all over the empire. The engineering to keep it all alive was just mind-boggling. They had this super complex system of pumps and wheels and aqueducts all working to defy gravity and water this paradise in the sky. Truly incredible.
But as amazing as the buildings were, the real magic of Babylon was its people. The city was this massive crossroads for the ancient world. You'd have merchants from everywhere haggling in the markets, scholars looking up at the sky and developing some seriously advanced astronomy. It was this buzzing, vibrant hub where different cultures met and exchanged ideas. A true cosmopolitan city. But we all know how these stories go, don't we? Like every great empire, Babylon's golden age couldn't last forever. The tides of history were starting to turn, and even the biggest, strongest walls in the world eventually come up against a force they just can't stop. And the beginning of the end came in 539 BC. That's when the city fell to a new power, Cyrus the Great of Persia. Now, Babylon didn't just disappear overnight. People still lived there. But its independence, its power, its spirit, that was broken. And over the next few centuries, the grand palaces started to crumble. The busy streets fell silent, and slowly but surely, the desert sands just began to swallow the city whole.
And when you put it side by side, the change is just stark. The place that was once the heart of a huge empire became just another forgotten province. Those bustling, vibrant streets, they became silent, a place for ghosts and sand. And those incredible palaces that once amazed the entire world, they just crumbled, slowly turning back into the very dust they were built from.
So the physical city is gone. It fell. But what about everything it created? What about its ideas? Did they die too? Well, no, not at all. Babylon's true legacy might have been buried, but it was definitely not lost. So what really lasted? So much more than just ruins. Think about it. Babylon gave us the very concept of written law, something that's at the foundation of our own legal systems today. Their architectural genius inspired builders for thousands of years. Their incredible observations of the stars laid the groundwork for modern science. And, of course, they left us with these powerful, epic legends that still capture our imagination. And you might be asking, how do we even know all this stuff? Well, it's thanks to the incredible, tireless work of archaeologists. They're the ones who've pieced this whole story together, bit by bit, from tiny cuneiform tablets, from the foundations of massive ziggurats, and from the ruins of those palaces. They're the ones who brought Babylon back to life for us. When you really think about it, the story of Babylon is so much more than just a history lesson. It really is a legend. It's a story that's inscribed not just in stone, but somewhere deep in the soul of human history itself. It's this timeless reminder of just how ambitious we can be and how incredibly ingenious we are. And that really leaves us with one last thing to think about, doesn't it? We've seen this incredible city rise up and then crumble back into dust, and it really makes you wonder. Empires can fall, buildings can turn to sand, but do their ideas? Do they ever really die?